not meant to work all the time. If it did, I wouldn't have a job. I arbitrarily break things just so I have some reason to fix it so that my check keeps coming to me. So.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
Wait, we're not live yet, so okay. We're ready. We're live now.
I started recording already, so I'll let you know.
We are now, yes.
Like it
Okay, so we're going to call the meeting to order at 6:07 p.m. We took no action during closed session, and we will now start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, wait, I had like the flag up. Fred, can we just use your flag as our flag? I had one up before.
Yeah, it was up.
I know. There we go. Okay, we have a flag. All right. All right. Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move, or I'll second. Sorry,
Okay.
Clara.
Was it, who did the first motion?
Whoever you want to pick.
Oh, was it Laura? Okay, motion by Ms. Pearson, second by Mr. Richard. And we'll vote. Fred?
Fred, unmute. Oh, maybe he was frozen. Oh, there you go.
I don't know if you can hear me, but it's like my whole screen is locked up. It hasn't come past the video preview yet.
We can hear you.
We can hear you and see you.
Okay. I'm going to have to reboot because I've got a video preview screen that like Mr. Hickman would let you in. So
Can we just vote to approve the agenda?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes, well, 5-0. We're opening the meeting. Okay. So we now are going to move on to special items and recognitions. And the first item is Spotlight on Success. Do any of the board members have something that they want to share or spotlight?
I had a great time visiting school sites right before winter break. It was fun to see the different activities going on. And then I did go to middle school and see the parking lot full and went to the preschools. So I hope everybody enjoyed some well-deserved rest and can't wait till we can start going back to school sites. That's one of the reasons I chose this job. Thanks guys for all you're doing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Maxon, for sharing. I got to go to some of the sites too before the break, and it was really fun. Every site kind of did something different, but there was a gingerbread house like drive-through at Live Oak where they handed out kits, and I know CE did something. So, thank you to all the staff and teachers for making those things happen and for helping people, on campus in their cars. So that was really fun. So, and there was a really fun little elf on the shelf, and we even had Santa Claus at one of the places. So, so that was fun. Anyone else?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Laura.
No, it's all good. I like that we're liking all the same things. Thank you, Janine, for being our little elf on the shelf at all the schools. And thank you to Santa Claus for being out there at Castaic Elementary School, Mr. Malcolm.
Okay, so we will now move on to the school awards and tonight we're honoring Castaic Middle School. So I will turn that over to Mr. Brauneisen.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having Castaic Middle School here this month. We're proud to announce our recognition. I want us, our Spotlight of Success people, our Student of the Month. I'd like to start with the student. And I'd like to introduce Mrs. Rupel, who will speak about Aaliyah. Mrs. Rupel.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to be here, and Ms. Thomas is also going to join me. We've already kind of planned a joint share here. So I will start with our Student of the Month for Castaic Middle School is Aaliyah Ismail. Ms. Thomas and I are here to share some of her great attributes, but all of her teachers, including Ms. Maxey, Mr. Bratz, who is also here because he's going to be recognized, Ms. Moreno, I even know Mrs. DeLamos is here in spirit. Everyone contributed to the comments that we're going to say about you tonight. And as a side note, I have to say, you know, you have a special student because when her name came up, when we were talking about, you know, who we thought would be a good candidate for this award, when Aaliyah's name came up, the room just erupted. Oh, she's wonderful. She's fabulous. So it's well-deserved. She is the type of student you really enjoy having in your class. She has a great personality. It shines across the computer screen. And let me just tell you, teaching middle school through a screen, a lot of them are very shy. They don't want to talk, but Aaliyah is always there. She's a pleasure to have in our class. She might even show up in a Santa hat just to be festive. And Ms. Thomas is going to take it from there.
Thank you, Mrs. Rupel. So Aaliyah is also a conscientious student who always strives to do her best. You can tell that she's serious about learning because she has a great attitude, and she is a student you can rely on every day to be in class on time and ready to engage in learning. Let me tell you, if I need somebody to answer a question, Aaliyah, okay, I'll do it. She'll volunteer. It doesn't matter. She's cool like that. Aaliyah has adapted well to distance learning by maintaining successful grades all semester and demonstrating a positive work ethic. We are glad to have her this year and know that she will continue to be successful in whatever she does in the future. Congratulations, Aaliyah.
Woo! Very well deserved. So.
Great job. Can you share with us who's with you?
I have my mom, my grandma, my brother, and my dad here.
Okay.
And my dog, Max.
And the dog, exactly. What's the dog's name?
Max.
Max. Well, we're so proud. We're so proud to have you. We're so proud to have you at Castaic Middle School, and it's the award is very well deserved. So congratulations.
Thank you so much.
I would like to go to our classified employee of the month, and that's Angelica Garcia. Angelica is a campus supervisor who, during this COVID time, volunteered to take on additional job responsibilities and has really blossomed into a phenomenal instructional type of aide, EL support. She has really done a phenomenal job. And this is one of those, I would say, one of those success stories that COVID has opened up a whole nother path for Angelica. And this is a good thing. I mean, if we can recognize a good thing about COVID, working with our EL students, working with the teachers, she's done a wonderful job, and I know they've all been extremely thrilled to have her support. So Angelica, congratulations and thank you very much. Mrs. Buntich, as our CSCA person, thank you for giving our classified the opportunity to further their experience and have different opportunities, because without that, we wouldn't be honoring Angelica.
Thank you. Yes, I just want to say also about Angelica real quickly. You have really amazed us, and you are truly, truly a you know, earlier board meetings, I have said that the classified staff have really shined in their new positions, and you are one of those examples that have just shined in your new duties. And if once this is over, if possible, I would like to find you a position in what you're doing now, because you are really thriving. So thank you so much, Angelica, and congratulations to you.
Let's look at my certificated employees. And I'm actually recognizing a team or an entire department, right? And that's my PE department, Mrs. Gingrich and Mr. Bratz. So congratulations, Mrs. Gingrich and Mr. Bratz. I will tell you, with COVID, probably the most difficult, and I know they're going to be tired of hearing this because I say this all the time. What they've done with the PE department has been extraordinary based on the spring and what happened with PE back then, and based on COVID and based on just PE at home. And really what they integrated, they spent a lot of time over the break, summer break, to develop a wellness and mindfulness aspect to PE. And the students have really done well with the mindfulness during this time. They need that time. And it's not odd for me to see, you know, Mr. Bratz in the room doing different exercises, stretching, meditating, but really working with the kids. And Mrs. Gingrich, both of them are really getting to know the students individually, and they will have them share things in class. And the PE program that we're offering at Castaic Middle School during COVID, I would say is quite the blue ribbon program. So congratulations and thank you very much to both of you. And you are allowed to speak. You're just gonna nod and say thank you, right? All right, so thank you very much. I'm really thrilled. I'm gonna roll straight into my principal's report. But I've shared this multiple times with district leaders, and I'm really impressed with the staff at Castaic Middle School. With when COVID started and teachers, we were starting the school year, I had every teacher except for one teaching from the school site. And that's very important, because although some teachers on and off will work from home based on certain risk or based on certain needs, as a whole, another benefit to COVID is I really believe my staff has become closer, have worked well together. They've become problem solvers, collaborators. I can't say that, but you know what I'm trying to say. Lifelong learners. One problem comes up, you have 5 or 6 staff willing to fix it. And anyone who knows Mr. Simons, the joke is he's becoming our tech guy. Now, he'll never be a tech guy, but he has really jumped on the new technology, and he has really made an effort to give the kids the best experience possible. And I really believe that what we're offering at Castaic Middle School with 3 periods a day, teachers are teaching 30, 35 minutes. They then give asynchronous work, but they're available to support struggling learners. They're there for the last half hour of the class to provide support and enrichment and intervention. We still are offering office hours. And so the teachers in the afternoon after 3 classes, so a CMS teacher is working from 8:30 in the morning, nonstop to 1:15. and that is with a nutrition in between, and they take their lunch after 1 o'clock, and then they'll do their office hours after lunch. And then their day is over around 2:30, 3 o'clock. So CMS teachers are basically keeping a very similar schedule to what they had before. And the support for our learners are there. So I can't say enough about the teachers supporting the kids, and all my classified staff that have been there in the summer and from the start, from day one, making sure parents are helped and the kids are supported. Our librarian has the library open so people can check out books. Students have come by, they go to the side door, they can go in, get some tech support if their Chromebook doesn't work, and they can check out books. So our library is still open for students to get books. Overall, we're trying to keep things kind of as normal as possible. So I have a very short board presentation. Dale, if you can go to the next slide. Okay, here's just some quick pictures of some of the teaching environments at CMS, and you will see that a lot of the teachers are utilizing 2 computers. One computer is for Zooming, one is for business. How our teachers are doing this is that when students are having trouble, they contact the teacher through Google Mail or through Jupyter. And so they're using one computer to communicate with the students as they're zooming with the other one. And then you'll see everyone kind of has a different little setup. They all kind of have their unique backdrops and their unique settings. So I just want to give you guys kind of a glimpse of what a classroom looks like. It's not what we're used to, but this is like the new classroom. Go to the next one, please. I just want to cover iReady. iReady has been going on now. We've done 2 diagnostics. They're all done at home. We've noticed that when they're done at home, they're taking a little longer than they would have if they're doing it in class, which is not a bad thing. You know, the students maybe just don't feel rushed and they're taking their time. But here's our iReady data from 7th and 8th grade. I can thank Ms. Price for pulling this together because she is our iReady person. And the difference you'll see, diagnostic 1 to diagnostic 2, and that's for reading and math. And as you will see, tier 1 increased, which is always good. It's our bigger group. Tier 2 decreased, and unfortunately on this one, tier 3 increased by 2 percentage points. However, during COVID and having them take it at home, I'm not really sure what we would consider the plus or minus on the accuracy of this, but I think these are really good numbers. You're not seeing a huge loss of learning based on these numbers. If you look at math, phenomenal. Tier 3 decreased by 7%. Tier 2 decreased by 1%. And these are the numbers you want. Tier 1 went from 35% to 43%. So those are some really, really great math numbers combined. Next slide. So this is just broken down now as 7th grade. And you'll see in reading, they went down, decreased by 2 points. In tier 1, decreased by 2 percentage points. In tier 2, and increased in tier 3. Once again, kind of that plus minus area. In math, our tier 3, our at-risk tier 3, went from 26 to 22%. That's an area that we want to see going down. Tier 2 decreased, which it's good if it decreases if it goes to tier 1. right? Now that's a positive decrease because it did. We went from 39% to 49% in tier 1. Those are commendable numbers for our 7th grade math students. If we can go to 8th grade, please. So 8th grade, in reading, tier 3 increased by 1%. Tier 2 decreased from 19% to 16%, and tier 1 increased. So we had 2% coming down and 1% going up. Once again, we're at over 50% in tier 1. And math for 8th grade, I have 9% decreased. So we went from 37% in tier 3 to 28%. Oh, that's a great change. We went from 32% to 35%. So coming down, it went down, and then tier 1 saw the nicest growth, 37% from 32%. Right. So I would say that if you looked at our iReady numbers, I would say that the from diagnostic 1 to diagnostic 2, it's a good sign that students are learning, and there's some good growth there. Next slide. Something I wanted to share. Hold on. Oh, one thing I want to share about the completion of the first semester. First semester ends on Friday, January 15th. Grades are sent home January 19th. The remote learning, as a faculty, as a staff, we sat together in leadership, and then as a whole staff, we came up with a grading policy and a philosophy. From the very beginning in August, our 2 key terms that we were using was flexibility and compassion. When you're teaching during this time frame, during COVID, during remote learning, we wanted to remind everyone to have flexibility with the students, have compassion for the difficulties that they're running across. It's the same thing I'd ask families to have with my teachers or with everyone else. I mean, we're doing our very best, and I really think my teachers have grasped that flexibility and compassion. When we were talking about grades, we are having some difficulty with remote learning. Some students are struggling, and some students are thriving. But we made a commitment not to give any F grades. And in turn, we decided to give no credit in place of F. Now, a grade in its rawest form is supposed to measure learning. And some students just have not turned in enough work to actually measure their learning. So giving an F really wouldn't be reflective of what they learned. We just felt that for those that were missing work or having difficulties, it was more compassionate to give a no credit instead of saying that they failed. Right, so that's something that CMS staff came up with. Currently, right now, Ms. Price and I are holding intervention meetings with families in which their students struggled in attendance or grades or both. Today, I had 2 meetings, parents and child, and it's a meeting of how can we help? What can we do to make you more successful? It's a conversation, and the conversation is trying to find out the situation that they're in and try to work with them to make them more successful. And so we will ongoing, I've sent these out to about 20 to 30 families. We've had about 5 or 6 so far the first week we've come back, and we hope to continue to have them. I do them in person. We also, though, have some people that would prefer to do it through Zoom, and Ms. Price is doing the Zoom meetings with those families. And what we are working on is focusing on bringing back our at-risk cohorts. Currently, right now, as we put a hold on our cohorts, we are looking forward. When cohorts were coming, we had 4 cohorts of about 32 students. And when we have the ability, when it's safe, when it's worked out with the staff on how to best meet the needs of the students first and how to do it within a very extremely safe environment, we will look at possibly bringing back some of our English learners and some of those families that we're currently meeting with to help them become more successful. And then the last one is my favorite slide. Which means it's question and answer time. I'm done. Unless there's a question. And hopefully I can give you a correct answer.
I have some questions. In regards to their grades, you talked about how you're not failing anybody and how grades are supposed to reflect obviously like what they've learned, but it's hard to do so when they haven't turned things in. So my question is, you know, obviously the iReady data looks really good. So how do you factor that in with what you're seeing as far as kids getting no credit, but like if they're learning, so how do you?
Well, that's a good question. If you guys want to close the presentation so we can go into the regular, there we go. You know, iReady was never meant to be factored into grades.
Okay.
But it is utilized as a form of data to assess. It's just one of those multiple forms of data that we look at. So we are looking at it. And in some cases, the iReady data in our conversations with parents is giving evidence to the parents that their child is much more capable than what they're producing. And so it has helped us have the conversations is that, you know, your child's right on track at grade level in iReady, but they're not turning things in and they're not doing certain work. So we definitely use it as just a data point when we're having discussions.
Okay. Another question I had is, I mean, you kind of sort of answered academically, but how do you see your students, how are they doing emotionally?
I think in this environment, they're holding up as well as expected, but they are missing the socialization. They are missing peer interactions and just the average things that happen to you growing up when you're at school. You know, we do provide counseling support, and we have Miss Lapata, our counselor, has regular appointments with students to work with them. I will tell you of the wellness. I give a ton of thanks to my PE department because their program has made a huge difference. And I don't know if you guys recall, but I had sent an email that a student had sent Mrs. Gingrich on how much of a difference her wellness program is. And I sent it on to Mr. Doyle and a few people. And I think there's a lot of students that I think the attendance and participation in PE is so high because they're getting that interaction and they're getting the wellness and everything from that as well. But we also use site-based or school-based counseling for students that are really struggling. We've done a few home visits to work with students that are struggling.
Nice.
So we try to hit all these different pieces.
Well, thank you to the PE department and the other staff that are helping the kids in all ways. So yeah, it occurred to me this week that you have 8th graders that were 7th graders last year, and they've essentially only been on campus maybe 5 months of their entire middle school experience, and it just made me sad. So I just, just my heart goes out to them, knowing all that they're missing and all the fun stuff that you always have going on at the middle school is, the basketball, tournament with the sheriff's department and the turkey bowl and anyway, I won't go on because then it'll just be too depressing. So, but anyway, my heart goes out to them, and I'm just sad, that we're in this predicament. So I just kind of wondered how they were doing, and anyway, I hope that we can.
There's a lot that we miss. I mean, we missed the All Valley cross country race that really is a great team builder, and it's really great for the students to be part of. We have continued our student of the quarter, and when we pick our 7th and 8th grade overall student of the quarter, we've gone and delivered pizza and treats for them. We did Pride Friday where people were doing outstanding effort in iReady, and we'll continue to recognize and honor those students. So it's just, we're doing things completely in a different manner. So quick question, will there be an 8th grade graduation ceremony? We will do something for our 8th graders like we did last year. What it looks like, a lot of it is going to be based on, pretty quick, right? You asked a question, quick response. Everything will be based on the requirements that are given to us at that time. Hopefully things are so much better that we can do something different, but absolutely. When we were having the meetings with the students, I'm meeting with 7th graders who've been students of mine for the first semester that I've never seen. At one point I asked them to, back up and lower their mask so I can just see what they look like before I meet with them, because I'm not seeing, it's very difficult. The connectivity that we have as educators with our students, a lot has to do with proximity and has to be in person. So it's very difficult to have a whole grade level of students that you physically have never met, but we're getting around it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from other board members? And I'm really glad that Alia asked that question. Thanks, because that was one of my questions. So thanks for asking that.
Yeah, Maureen, I had a couple questions. Thanks for the presentation. That's so helpful, and thanks for all those who you highlighted. It's fantastic. And you mentioned before, maybe a little bit of question about the for the grading, Bob. You mentioned that they get no credit. I was just curious. They have to have a certain amount of credits to move on grade rise, right? For those who get no credit, is there a way for them to make it up? Is it summer school, like a summer school, or how does that work? I was just curious how that's working.
The requirement to move on is a local based requirement that we have put on ourselves. We have a promotion requirement, and the promotion requirement is that you must finish 100 credits in 2 years.
Okay.
But we also, can I go back to my 2 terms that we started off in August?
Yes.
Right? Flexibility and compassion. We know we're in a different environment. I have students who in 6th grade had all A's that are getting D's and C's and no credits. And I have 8th graders who had 3.5s that are at 1.5s. We work with trying to raise those grades up, but we have to have compassion and understand this is not normal. Right? This is not typical for our learners. So because of that, we will honor all of our CMS students. And really our concern is getting them up to pace when they move on to high school.
Okay. But thanks for doing that. And thanks for being so kind and compassionate, because I know you work so hard, and everybody there works so hard. I mean, I've had 5 kids go through there. So they work through so hard to help them succeed. So thank you for doing that, even in this time, and even with, thank you for even the in-meeting persons for all involved. That's huge. So.
And I will personally say thank you for my entire staff, because that is a staff decision. You know, like, I just represent the staff. I proudly represent the staff, but thank you.
And my other question is no big deal. So that's what Roy, I was just asking on that. So.
Okay.
Are there questions from any of the other board members?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brauneisen, for the presentation, and congratulations to all those that were honored tonight. We just appreciate, you know, everyone and all that they do. And so anyway, thank you. And don't feel like everyone has to stay on the rest of the night. So unless you just really want to, you're welcome to stay. Okay, so I think if there are no other questions or comments for Mr. Brauneisen, then we will now move on to number 4, the School Board Recognition Month. Are you presenting that, Mr. Doyle?
Sharman, do we have that? So that was something new this year that CSBA did, right?
Yes. And you'll see that in the description of the item. And it says here, I'll just read it really quickly so that you have it. This January, the School Boards Association, California School Boards Association, salutes local educational agency boards and encourages communities around California to do the same. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Roughly 5,100 California School Board trustees and encourages communities around California to do the same. Roughly 5,100 California School Board trustees, the largest group of elected officials in the state, aid in supporting student success by establishing policy priorities and benchmarks. Trustees provide a critical accountability link between the schools and the community and offer an accessibility to voters that is unrivaled by other public office holders.
So we just wanted to take a minute to recognize you as school board members and thank you, especially in these pandemic times. There's been no more difficult time ever to be in education. This is my 31st year and I've never seen as many challenges, but we're all doing the best we can with the resources we have, trying to maintain safety for all students and staff. And you as board members are on the front line of that. So we wanted to follow along with CSBA's recommendation and recognize January as School Board Appreciation Month. So congratulations to all of you and thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we will now move on to, I guess I'm just a little embarrassed by that. I just sort of feel like the attention should not be on us. You guys have a hard job, so.
What a year to do it, right?
What did you say, Laura?
I said, what a year to actually recognize the board members.
I know. I'm like, can we just gloss over that and move on and not, anyway, so.
Maybe I was actually laughing a tiny bit only because, you know, when I went to Masters in Governance training, the school board member, the trustees are the least trusted people in education within the school district. And so it's kind of an interesting deal. So, yeah, but thank you.
All right, so now we'll move on to comments from our CTA representative. Patty, would you like to?
Good evening. First, I would like to thank Mr. Doyle for temporarily shutting down the cohorts and extending and recommending February 16th as the possible date to bring back TK students. However, many of our members still have concerns about returning on the 16th. Our COVID numbers have been the highest they have been, and we still have not hit the New Year's surge. How can a decision be made tonight to return on the 16th when we are in the midst of the highest death rate toll from COVID statewide? When I went onto the LA County Daily COVID Data app, I didn't see graph lines decreasing. I saw lines that have skyrocketed. This is unsafe. I have read that Henry Mayo has to send people to other hospitals because they are full. What happens to the people who don't have COVID? For example, someone who has a heart attack or in a car accident, and they have to go, the closest one I am thinking about is Holy Cross, 20-minute drive with no traffic. Also, according to our news outlets, large groups of people met outside without masks and in close contact. This has happened in our town. These, as Mr. Doyle said, these are challenging times. So much of the unknown, decisions we never dreamed we would have to make. I want to stress that teachers want to bring students back, but with the high current COVID numbers, we are putting families, students, teachers, and staff at risk. Again, I want to say, we don't see how a decision could be made tonight to bring TK teachers on February 16th. That's 30 days from now, with our COVID numbers going up. Before a decision is made, Castaic Teachers Association would strongly recommend that we look at the numbers at the next board meeting before making a decision. One last thing, as you know, I am the spokesperson for our members. If any board member would like to ask questions about how the members feel, I would be more than happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty, and thanks to all your members for all the work that they do. This has not been an easy year, and they've had, extra work and a lot of, anyway, it's just been tough. So thank you.
Thank you for saying that, because they have worked really hard.
They have.
Really
they really have. So we appreciate you and them and all that you guys do. So are there any questions from or anything from other board members before I move on to the next item? Okay. All right. We'll now move on to comments from our CSEA representative, Ms. Buntich.
Hi, good evening, everybody. On behalf of CSEA, we too would like to thank Mr. Doyle for allowing us to work from home for the remainder of January. However, as you know, CSEA have many classified people in different job classes. And just like the first day of school, we have many members still working on site and going in each day for the betterment of the students and the families that are still needing to be on site. So I want to take this moment to thank especially some of those job classes, transportation, our bus drivers getting our kids to school. I want to thank our Mod Severe aides, both in North Lake Elementary and in the preschool, who are continuing to come in and serve those children. I want to thank the all-day community preschool, both the lead teachers and the aides, for coming in on site, working with those children. I want to thank the office staff at every single site, all the elementary schools, the middle school, the office staff that are coming in, making sure that all our staff are getting paid, our payroll department, our business department, CSEA members, and we have librarians as well. So I want to say thank you, because that is still a lot of people that are coming in to work on site at the campuses. And I just want you to know that we are there, obviously, to support and to there for the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Buntich, and thank you to all your members, because I know they've been on campus and running the offices and the buses and libraries. And so we just really appreciate all that they've done to keep our schools running. So thank you, and thanks to them. So are there any comments or questions from other board members? Okay. All right, we will now move on to the hearing session portion of the meeting. State law prevents the board from acting on any matter not listed on the agenda or from discussing any such matter in any detail. The board will take any comments received under advisement for possible future discussion and/or action. So first we will hear, I believe we had a couple of advance requests to address the board?
Yes, ma'am. We
Ms.
received 2
Ortega?
advance requests to address the board.
Okay.
Both were provided to the board prior to the start of the meeting for your review. One of the 2, it was requested that it be read aloud. So we have 1 letter to read aloud. It says, "Good evening, Castaic Union board members. I have been a teacher in this district for 20 years this year. I love Castaic and value the relationships we have in our small district. I would love nothing more than to be back in the classroom with my students, but not in the middle of the biggest surge of this pandemic we have ever seen. With the numbers of cases rising, it has been said from the health professionals that we should assume that everyone that we come into contact with has this virus, and that is scary. We are even being asked to stay home, more now than at any other time. It is not the right time to go back to face-to-face teaching. I ask that you please reconsider deciding upon opening the schools until it is safer to do so. I would like for you to please look at the numbers and data before you make any final decisions. The numbers and data change every day and are very unpredictable. Teachers are next in line for the vaccine, but even when we do get it, we won't have full results from it for weeks after we receive the second dose. There is a lot to be considered before deciding on opening schools. I am very afraid for myself, staff, and students to return to the classroom during this disturbing uptick in cases and hospitalizations. Teachers are asked to step up and do many things, but please don't ask us to return to the classroom and risk our health, our lives, and our family members' lives. Please listen to your teachers. Please do not decide to reopen the schools until there is evidence and data that this virus is getting under control. Respectfully, Deanna Giovanelli, TK kindergarten teacher." That was the only one that was requested we read aloud.
Oh, sorry, I thought we had 2. So there was just 1?
2 letters received. 2 letters were received, but 1 was just provided for your review.
Okay.
And
all right.
and the 1 was requested to be read aloud.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Ortega. All right, we will now move on to presentations and reports. Mr. Doyle, we'll start with you and your superintendent's report.
Well, Happy New Year to everybody. We certainly hope that 2021 brings us some better, prosperous times, I hope. I was reflecting on a year ago, the end of January, we were having a conversation about whether or not we were going to allow our Chinese exchange students to come, and ultimately made the decision to not allow them to come. That's been almost a year since that very first conversation was had. It's hard to believe that we're still here, and it saddens me as well. But I do hope that there's some hope on the horizon. They're talking about the 1B section being all people in education, being able to be vaccinated as early as the beginning of February. So we're hopeful that that will happen. We're also hearing rumors that there may be what they call a mega point of distribution or mega pod out in Santa Clarita. My guess is it might be Magic Mountain. So they're opening up the first mega pod at Dodger Stadium tomorrow to begin vaccinations for the 65 and older population. So we're hopeful that there's hope on the horizon. You know, last week we had we resumed our weekly conversations with Dr. Farrar and the 80 LA County Public Schools. And at that point, I was a little surprised in that, you know, not surprised in looking at the data and the transmission rates and how they're spiking dramatically, and deaths are on the rise and hospitalizations and ICU beds are unavailable. But the fact that Dr. Farrar has been a champion all along to get our schools open and to get our kids back in person, starting with our youngest learners first. She continually praises school districts for the fact that we do follow the protocols probably better than any other business entity that's out there, because we're school people. We follow the rules. That's what we do. So to hear her strongly urge and ultimately on Friday put in writing that we should minimize the amount of either employees or students on any campus, with the exception of the meal distributions, mandatory testing for special ed services, and then your most needy populations. And so collectively as a group in Santa Clarita Valley, we all discussed the fact and came to the conclusion. And ultimately our ADCO, our administrative team, met on Friday and had a lengthy discussion, and we opted to pause our cohorts. I know that saddened all of us because we're really proud of the fact that September 28th at North Lake, we brought our very first cohort back and we were successful. We didn't have an outbreak. We didn't have any cases from our cohorts collectively. So we were proud of that. But it made sense to protect our employees, to allow for employees to work from home and hopefully get through this dark time. We're hopeful, as I said, that vaccinations are on the horizon. We've heard now a little bit, some of the details are coming out with the governor's new Safe Schools for All proposal that has some dollars tied to it. We're still waiting some of the details because there's a key testing component for staff and for students that's part of the requirement for to receive those funding dollars. So there's a lot in the move. So we have to just continue to be mindful. We encourage everybody to follow the protocols, wear your mask, wash your hands, socially distance, minimize the amount of time you're out. The sooner we all do that as a society, the sooner we can open our schools back up. And that's always been our goal, but we have to do it with safety in mind. I recognize that our younger students don't typically spread the disease, but we have a lot of adults that come from all walks of life and all different households. And, we've all had that scare. We all know somebody who's either been infected. They may have had mild symptoms. They may have had severe symptoms. It doesn't pick and choose how it attacks everybody individually. So at this point, we've said it from the very beginning that the safety of all our students and staff is going to be the highest priority. So we'll continue to move forward with that. So that's all I have for tonight. So thank you all. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Do any of the board members have a question for Mr. Doyle? Okay, we will now move on to the Educational Services Report. Ms. Tredick.
Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. We have a lot of school year left and we have a lot going on right now in Ed Services. So I just want to share a few of those things with you. So we are in the middle of selecting our Teacher of the Year to represent our district, and it's been a little challenging to figure out how we do observations, but our Castaic teachers don't really ever have a challenge that they can't overcome. So we're working through it and we have a plan, and that'll be shared tomorrow to the team so that we can go and have an opportunity to observe our 4 fabulous teachers, and then bring to you hopefully next month the one teacher that will be representing Castaic Union School District as the teacher of the district. Also, we are proceeding with the LPAC assessments. So LPAC is the English Language Proficiency Assessment for California. And all of our students who are English learners will be taking the summative LPAC. The window opens February 1st, and as far as we know, there has been no suspension or delay for this test. So our EL aides had training yesterday. They are ready for this challenge. We understand the scheduling puzzle it's going to present, but our team is very talented, very capable, and are committed to make sure that we do what's best for our kids and really get an accurate assessment of how our students are doing in their English language development. So LPAC will continue beginning February 1st. The next thing on our plan in Ed Services is the School Accountability Report Card. You will hear it called the SARC. And the SARC is where you might remember, it's an annual report that really gives you all the demographics and information and student achievement and the resources and environment related to each of our schools. So it's a requirement from the CDE. And Ms. LePage is currently working with our admin team on completing those SARCs, and those will be presented at the February board meeting. The next on the agenda to share with you tonight is we have in the past, looking at Live Oak and North Lake Hills, over the last few years, they've been operating as a targeted Title I school. And I am recommending that we transition them to school-wide Title I. and I will explain reasons why. So for our students who struggle and our students who are our lowest performing students, and in order for them to meet high standards, their entire school program, their entire instructional program, not just the Title I program, but everything must be substantially improved and targeted and intentional. And when the entire school is the target of change, then schools who serve the most disadvantaged students can achieve more success for all kids. So a school-wide program uses its Title I allocation to upgrade the entire educational system and program, and not just part of it. So no longer are students at Northlake or at Live Oak going to be Title I students. Teachers are not Title I teachers, but instead all students and at the school and all teachers at the school are going to be able to use the Title I dollars to improve the school's entire academic program. And the school-wide program is built upon reform strategies, and instead of the add-on services which Targeted does for our schools. So, and when you are a school-wide Title I school, you have a process very similar to the LCAP process, where there's a comprehensive needs assessment, and you identify and commit to specific goals and strategies and actions that support the needs of all your students in all of your educational program. And then there's a comprehensive plan. There's an annual review of that plan, and is also developed and approved annually through the School Site Council as well as the governing board. So all 4 of our schools have a single plan for student achievement, and all 4 of our schools will be following essentially the same model that we're using for our school-wide Title I schools. And through this process, we are working with our consultant, Becky Wetzel, as we develop our school plans, and we'll be bringing those to you, the board, in May. Are there any questions about Targeted and Title I school-wide programs before I move on to the very last? Okay. So the last item, I am going to, let me find my share button, but I am going to share my screen because I would like to share with you the information about our LCAP. And so let me put it in present mode for you. There we go. So as you may recall, I know Miss Maxon remembers, but back in April, there was an executive order that postponed the approval of the LCAP, and it actually delayed it to December so it would align with the budget overview for parents. Well, since then, and obviously because we are still in a very unusual environment, we have now a different timeline to follow for LCAP. So the new LCAP was supposed to start in 2021, is now starting 21-22. So this new LCAP that we're looking at is the 2021 through 2024 school years. And I would just wanted to share the process and remind you of the timeline and the stakeholder involvement as we go. So if you recall, it seems like forever ago, but it was last March when the board approved the 3 goals for moving forward for the new LCAP. So we're affirming those and moving forward using those in our new LCAP. So I've included here on this document the vision that was created through the strategic plan, and then also our mission, and then the 3 goals for the new LCAP. So if you'll notice, the first one is really about raising achievement for all students. Second one is really looking and focusing on multi-tiered systems of support and addressing the achievement gap between our student groups. And the third is really focused on operating safe, efficient, and effective schools and creating a safe school environment. And so those are the 3 goals. So moving forward with the timeline, I wanted to share this timeline with you. So central to the development of our local control and accountability plan, which is our LCAP, is the continual engagement of and input that districts are required to solicit from a broad range of stakeholders. And so under the law, we must consult with parents and school employees and students and take their feedback and their comments and then listen to their recommendations and actually address those in our plan. And so this timeline really sets the milestones for our LCAP development. And as you can see, we've been working on creating, and this is, the LCAP is not, my project is an entire district's plan. And it's a collaboration with all departments and particularly Ms. Hodson. And we'll be working with our school community to complete the LCAP in order for you to see it in June. So between now and June, we will be convening an LCAP advisory committee, and that will include parents, could be school site council members, DLAC, which is our district English Learner Advisory Committee, our union representatives, and any staff members. And luckily for us, Mrs. Maxson had already completed the most of the LCAP annual update in the spring. So those were all on hold, and now those moving forward, we will be completing those. I also will need to do a learning continuity and attendance plan, annual update on that as well. So we'll be bringing both of those to the board as well. We will be consulting board on your input and you know, some of those non-negotiables that you see are necessary. And then again, making sure that we ask for stakeholder input and looking at what do we need to make sure that we're addressing and providing in our LCAP. And we will ensure that our actions and services support those goals so that all of our students are successful. And we will, throughout the spring, be convening multiple stakeholder meetings, including talking to students about that. We will have surveys that are going out to the different stakeholder groups to solicit input on the success or areas of need related to goals and actions and services. When during this spring process, we will be submitting a draft of our draft to LACO for their input and their review. And then again, when we have kind of compiled all the stakeholder input, all the information, then LACO again has the reviews the draft for us. We will hold a public hearing in June, the first meeting in June, and then hopefully we will be adopting a new LCAP in the second meeting in June. And then I will submit the LCAP within 5 days of approval. So I just wanted to kind of share this information with you so that you can see that we are moving forward, and it's just we're just about just a year of a stall, and now we're moving on. Are there any questions that you have regarding the LCAP or the timeline?
How are you going to conduct those meetings?
So probably virtually at this point. I'm planning on holding, you know, open voluntary meetings. I will be inviting staff for the staff meetings. We'll be inviting, you know, maybe perhaps having school site meetings. We're not sure. We'll see what the stakeholders feel. We need to include how big those meetings are because we really do want our people to have a voice and have input. But they will be through Zoom. We will solicit information through surveys, and we will be putting those out through our Parent Square information and making sure everyone can hear about our meetings and are invited to our Zoom meetings so that we can get as much information out and then also collect the input.
So everyone's invited, and you'll be sending the information out via the normal channels of.
Right.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
What other questions might you have? Anyone? And a shout out to Mrs. Maxon for completing, or mostly completing, our annual update. When I discovered that, it was like, phew, you can ask Miss Hodson. All right, well, I will stop sharing my screen. And that is it for educational services, unless anyone has any more questions.
Thank you, Ms. Tredick, for your presentation. And it's really exciting to hear about your plans for Live Oak and North Lake and the Title I. I think that's a good plan. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we will move on to the business services report. And who is talking first?
I'm actually going to introduce Adam Bauer. I think
Welcome.
you all know Adam from Fieldman and Rolap. He's worked with the district for many years to help us finance, particularly construction projects. He's helped us refinance the COP. I know we were doing that when we first started doing virtual meetings, and he really helped me through that process and to calm me down during those difficult times. He's here tonight to talk about a community facilities district, and he also works with our developers in how to finance new construction. And again, he's been with the district for a long time, so he's worked with these developers as they've changed hands multiple times. But I'm going to turn it over to him, and I believe Dell has a presentation that he's going to put on. So
great, thank you. And I have a colleague with me, Rachel Chang Quay, and we're going to divide this presentation up into two. I'll focus on the kind of CFDs and what they are, and then Rachel will focus on the specific project that we're talking about here. Great, and so great. So there's my name on the front, but we also have Rachel there to help us. So if we can go to the next page, please. So why are we even talking about things like CFDs, and why aren't we just collecting school fees and making all that work? Is essentially in 1978, Prop 13 is passed, and we know you all heard of it. It's not the Prop 13, which really sent the wrong message in March of 2020. It's the Prop 13 associated with property taxes. And essentially at the time, California was experiencing a tremendous amount of growth. Values of property were increasing very quickly. Retirees weren't able to keep up with their taxes and forced to do things like sell their homes in order to pay their property taxes. And so there was a real movement in 1978 to say, let's cap that, make sure we protect people in that category. And that's when Prop 13 went into effect and limited the increase in property taxes to 2% or CPI. And so then, a few years go by, and what I think all governmental entities realize is they can't fund infrastructure at this point. So California went from being a very kind of wealthy when it comes to municipalities to one that really struggled. And so it takes a few years, but around 1982, the Mellorews, named after the two senators who came up with the legislation, came up with the Community Facilities Act of 1982, the Mellorews Act. And it was passed, and essentially what this did was allowed for with a 2/3 vote of an area, that area could agree to tax itself and provide that infrastructure that was missing between 1982 and 1978. And so with that in place, you started to see community facilities get formed. It did take quite some time. You had the mid 80s, I think in 1986 is when they really started coming into play. So why does a school district look at doing something like this and kind of dealing with, having me at your board meeting instead of focusing on other things, is oftentimes the developer wants you to do this, and they will pay something in excess of your statutory fees. Now, you have to be able to justify it. Like if for some reason the statutory fees paid for 100% of your construction, you can't go out and make a profit off this. But the way level 1 and level 2 are set up, we're not even close to that, right? They're engineered so that they don't provide the full amount of mitigation. And so what we do here is we negotiate to get a greater amount than you'd otherwise receive to help offset that loss that you have with all new development. So next slide, please. Well, I know, okay, so there we go. So public schools can form these, and one of the big advantages for developers is you're able to do the tax exempt financing, which we talked about quite a bit, where a developer is not able to. I've already talked about SB 50. I didn't use SB 50 language specifically, but I explained that it doesn't fully mitigate the cost of new development. It's a calculation, and it's a negotiation that took place between developers and school district lobby groups, and they came up with a compromise, but it doesn't cover all the costs. And so what we have on this last bullet point here is just a calculation to show kind of where that level 1 fee is at this point in time. The district does not qualify for level 2, it qualifies for level 1. And absent any developer agreements like a CFD, this would be the only amount that the developer is obligated to pay you. So next slide, please. Okay, now it gets a little less dense, less words on a page, to kind of toned it down a bit. But I basically hit on this as well, is it allows the school district to get something in excess. What the developer gets out of it is they either post fees and get reimbursed, or they have the property owners basically pay back the basically pay for the fees by doing it through the financing and not have to pay up front. So they certainly see the advantages there, along with the tax exempt ability, and also the fact that this runs with the land, not their balance sheet. So when they don't necessarily have to show the debt on their balance sheet because it runs with the land. I've already hit on the second bullet point there. And then the other thing that we oftentimes look to do is make sure that there's some ongoing benefit when doing a CFD. So if you did a CFD and it had bonds out there for 30 years, you can oftentimes set them up so that there's a very small amount, but an amount that is available for projects, and then some other money that's available at the end. So next slide, please. So school districts are given this authority in the Millers Act. Then kind of drop down there a few bullet points. One of the things that we're looking at here is the developer is not asking the school district to be the one that actually forms the CFD. They're working with the high school district to be what we call the lead agency, and asking Castaic to be a partner in that through a joint community facilities agreement. And so then the logic here is when the Belarus Act was passed, they know that there's overlapping jurisdictions, and they didn't want the water agency to have a CFD, the city to have a CFD, the county to have a CFD, so that basically there's all this duplicative cost to all these different governmental entities doing it. So what they allowed was that one agency could take the lead, and then other agencies could partner with that. And the logic for having HART take the lead on this one is that there's a greater amount of funding and other projects associated with this that are within HART boundaries and not within Castaic boundaries, so they could have it more seamless with the HART taking the lead. What's important to us is that we don't take a back seat in funding. And so some of the things that we've talked with the developer about is getting the same priority in funding. And if the bond proceeds don't generate enough, they have to pay out of pocket. And so that's one of the things we've really worked hard to make sure that even if Castaic doesn't run the CFD, they are not disadvantaged by allowing another party to be the lead agency. So when bonds are sold on these, basically, like I think you have one that just recently got paid off. And what takes place here is the bonds are sold, and then the revenue that goes to repay them is from the CFD, not from the district. The district has done something just a little bit different. When we sold the COP the first time around, before we did a refinancing, that COP was secured by the CFD revenue of another CFD that you have. And at that time, credit spreads are very wide. So investors were saying, we don't want a CFD bond in Castaic or a lot of other areas. But we do like that the school district had a pretty good budget. And so what we did was we sold COPs, but then always planned on using the CFD revenue to repay it. So we got the lower cost of borrowing by having the general fund involved, but we had the CFD revenue to go back to repay it. So next slide, please. So what is a formation process like? Well, first of all, they can be any shape or size. This one encompasses the whole development, and Rachel will walk us through that. The projects funded don't necessarily have to be within the CFD boundaries. And I mentioned that the Belarus Act allows for other agencies' fees or facilities to be financed. That's through this JCFA, Joint Community Facilities Agreement, which I hit on here. And this is a mechanism that would allow us to partner into the HART CFD. Next slide, please. I'll turn it over to Rachel to talk a bit more about this project.
Great, thank you, Adam. And as a overview of the project on slide number 7 here, the district has received a proposal from a local developer to participate in this CFD. As Adam mentioned earlier, JCFA is an efficient way to reduce the cost and number of CFD on a property, and the developer is proposing for the district to be a JCFA partner in a CFD led by the high school district. To ensure the CFD is beneficial to the district, we have negotiated for a mitigation premium of 120% of the district's level 1 fee. This would translate to a total school facilities funding of $4.3 million, which is about $700,000 more than if we just collect developer fees. To get into more details about the proposed project on this slide, you will see a map to show the general location of these 497 single-family homes. They are located in the unincorporated county portion of the district's boundaries and west of the I-5 freeway and north of Hastley Canyon Road. Any questions on the projects before we move on? Then moving on to slide number 9, working with district staff, we understand an area of importance is protection for Castaic Union School District, and detail on this slide specifically, we have negotiated for the developer to 1, make payment as security at the time of each certificate of compliance. The district will also receive the full $4.3 million funding from either bond proceeds and or these COC deposits. This really helps to ensure that the district CFD funding is well protected with no shortfall. And as Adam mentioned earlier, the same priority as any other agency's funding through the CFD. And now that we've reviewed the specifics of this JCFA terms, next to review the schedule for the process. It is common for the JCFA schedule to follow the lead agency's formation timeline. This is because one would want to make sure that the CFD formation is progressing with the lead agency before they approve a JCFA. HART is currently scheduled to take items to their February board meeting. With that, we expect to bring back the JCFA for the board's consideration at either the February or March meeting. This concludes our presentation for tonight. I will pause, and Adam and I are happy to answer any questions.
Could we take a moment to go back to 9? I want to just get in a little bit more of the details on that one. So this first bullet point, and why this one is so important, is there's a lot of developers can be very optimistic, and they don't always finish their projects. And Castaic has definitely experienced that. In this case, to the extent that they get a building permit, you have the fees in hand. So if we think the project's moving along, we're going to keep that money set aside, we're going to reimburse them, and we're going to get bond proceeds. But if for some reason that project stalls out, you have access to those funds. And so that was the first thing that we said was a must-have in order for Castaic to consider something like this. We're working with district staff. And then the other thing was, we don't want HART to soak up all the bond proceeds and then have some mechanism where Castaic had to wait for fees to come through special taxes down the road. So when the day HART gets it, if there's not enough money to pay Castaic in full, the developer must give us the balance of those deposits. So one way or another, we're going to have full amount of the 120% of the expected developer fees on the day of that bond pricing. So these were 2 very important points when considering doing this.
Are there any questions for Adam and Rachel? Jaime,
well, then I think,
yeah, I'm going to ask Jaime. Jaime, what would the name of this development be that most everybody would recognize? Because I don't believe that
This is the Palmer track.
Okay,
The
thank
old
you.
Palmer golf course for those of us who've been here for a while.
Is it Los Valles? Is that
Yes,
what
Los
it's going
Valles.
by now? Okay.
I just want to say that being here through this whole process and the fact that we have developers that go away and Adam, I really appreciate the fact that we're actually collecting more money up front.
It feels like there's been a lot of broken dreams for developers in Castaic. It feels like they get a lot of ambition when things are going good, and then it's the first place they run away from when things start going bad. And so I think in Castaic, it's particularly important to set them up so that you aren't disadvantaged if they walk away.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question? I have a quick question. It's a phased project. So am I hearing that they will do the full mitigation at the very beginning, not phasing it as the project is phased through how many years it's going to take to build out?
So good question. And I definitely see why you're asking that with the way I've laid it out here with Rachel. Is every building permit or our COC that gets issued, you're going to get your fees then. And then they're going to sell bonds over time. And so like, let's say that because there's 400 units or so here. So let's say they sell bonds for 100 units. You're going to get your full 120% of mitigation on the day that they sell for those 100 units. Now, if they come back 3 years later and sell for the next 100 units, you're going to get the full amount for that 100 units. And this continues until you get to that end.
Okay, thanks so much for the presentation. And I'll be honest with you, I have a lot of a lot of studying to do to make sure I am even in the slightest, at least I can dialogue with all the letters, all the words you said and everything with this. But I do have a question in general. Is this normal for the if there's two separate school districts that are in an area of development, that the bigger one takes the lead? In other words, you mentioned the Heart and they're taking the lead in this. Is there a great more advantage for them, or is that just because they're bigger than we are? That would make sense for them to do that.
So it's normal. It's normal to do it both ways. So it's
Okay.
normal to have several different CFDs on one property. And then it's also normal for districts to work with that developer and partner up. The developer sees some cost savings here. And they've also proposed mitigation to Heart and Castaic, or not proposed, but agreed to a level of mitigation that takes their tax bill up to about as high as they're comfortable trying to sell homes for. And so by the district agreeing to be a part of another CFD, I think it frees up more capacity, less costs for us to get money for construction projects. But there's a legal issue that I think has them has their eyes on Heart over Castaic. You have to, for school districts, when serving as a lead agency, they have to have the greater share of revenue. And so for the school district fees, it was a little bit higher. So they would put them in that greater share category of over Castaic. But if the school district looked up, and when I say school, when Castaic looks up and says, we would rather just do this on our own and not partner with Castaic, that's certainly with Heart, that's certainly an approach that we can take. In this instance, we felt like we got the protections that we wanted for the district. And so it made sense to consider looking at the partnership approach.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Adam and Rachel. And this will be coming forward as an action item as Heart makes their decisions. So we just wanted you to have some background information before we get to that point with Heart. So thank you.
Thank you. And the devil's in the details. We still need to see the agreements. We got these key points that we've worked with them on. And if the agreements come in like we hope they will, then there's something to talk about. If not, we'll just keep working at it until they get something that works for you. So thank you.
Thank you, Adam and
Thank you.
Rachel.
Okay, other stuff happening in the business office, the governor's budget is out, and it looks like good news for the state and for schools, which is good, because I think there's been a lot of fear that it was going to look much worse for everyone. So that is some good news in all of this. We are seeing a lot of one-time money, and it's actually restricted money. So restricted one-time money is difficult to spend. It has significant reporting requirements that go along with it. And it also requires a lot of communication between departments and schools. That's one of the advantages, I think, for Castaic being small, and we really do collaborate and work well together. It's because in order to spend effectively this money, we will have to piece together our program and make sure that it makes sense. Usually the January budget, you'll get a May revise, and then you'll actually get the adopted budget in June. In this case, or actually in July, in this case, the governor has 2 grants that he wants to fast track through the legislation that seems like it possibly will occur. So we're really watching the reopening money, that $450 per student, and what the end requirements are going to be for that. We have seen what the governor has proposed, but we also know that that will make some changes as it moves through the legislature. So we'll be watching that closely. And there also is a grant, again, that they're trying to fast track, but maybe not quite as quickly as the reopening. And it's a grant for summer school to extend the learning opportunities for students with the most learning loss. So those are things to watch in the next few weeks as we move forward. But that's the bulk of what we're working on right now, and that fast tracking reopening grant. We might actually be able to apply for the grant, it appears, and still not be able to reopen schools. So there will be some work that we can do, that we'll need to do quickly to be eligible for the full amount of money, even if we aren't able to reopen because of our numbers. So it's kind of an interesting proposal, and it will be interesting to see if that actually happens, if they are willing to give us the money if we aren't able to open. But that's what the proposal says right now.
And the application's due by February 1st, correct? And from what I read, it seems like it's a lot of the same stuff we submitted to get our waivers approved for TK through 2nd, right?
Right. I've been looking at that most of those documents started actually appearing with some detail this afternoon. And so the checklist looks like it's a lot of what we already have in place. So I think that, like I say, I actually, and Jaime's been working on the OSHA stuff, the Cal OSHA requirements. I think that we'll be able to apply and maybe not even be able to open schools. But again, that it all depends on what happens when it's all said and done through the legislature. They said that the quickest they've ever known anything to move through the legislature has been a month. So that means that there's no way that it would move through to meet the February 1st deadline. So I'm hoping maybe they'll give me another week. But that's it. It's gonna move. So.
Well, when you say that we may not be able to open, in the governor's plan, they have a metric of 28 cases per 100,000 as your measuring stick. You have to be at or below that number to be able to open your TK through 2nd. Currently, this week, we're at 77 cases per 100,000. So we're a long ways away from that. So while we may submit our application, we may meet all the requirements. The governor, the plan may allow us to delay that opening until we get to that 28 per 100,000. Is that correct?
That's the way I'm reading everything. And to me at this point is really to start talking about how we use our summer school and that summer break to maximize learning for our kids. Because I think that based on what the metrics look like, and if the requirements hold true, I think we're eligible for both pots of money. So what does that look like, and how do we have enough staff, and what do we have kids that'll participate? Because the last thing I want to do is take money and then have to pay it back. So I don't want that either. And the reporting requirements for all of this restricted money is pretty intense. So, it is a different challenge. We've been getting one-time money, but most of the one-time money we've been getting the last few years has been unrestricted. And so it is a different animal. This is a different approach than in the past couple of, or actually the past 50, or probably 8 years since we did LCFF. So other than that, unless you guys have questions for me, and I will probably have more information about the budget in the next couple of weeks. But I think all of you get the CSBA outlines, and they do a great job of providing that. So I encourage you to continue to read their updates.
Thank you, Ms. Hodson. Mr. Garcia, do you have anything to report?
Just a little to expand on the memo I sent you. I thought it'd be good to let you know that one of the items on the board is for the bus grant. We have one bus eligible, and just to give you an idea what the value of that grant is, a propane bus would be about $150,000 that we could get if all goes well. We can get rid of one of our diesel buses and get a brand new propane bus through this grant. So looking forward to that. We're moving very quick with Live Oak. Live Oak is really coming along, and we're going to be on a fast pace starting now to get us to June. So you're going to see a lot of documents coming for that project. Middle school, just trying to get out as with my skin. So I'm looking forward to completing that and getting into Live Oak, and the construction will continue and move forward.
What do you have an ETA for CMS
I hate
locker
to do
room?
that because I've been predicting, and every prediction I've made has been wrong.
What's the latest one?
The latest one is the end of March, and to be honest, I think maybe the first couple weeks of April.
Okay.
The last couple over the break, I went through a lot of headache just to get us to today. But after this week, I think we finally ironed out several of the issues that we had, and we got a good superintendent on the project that started in September. I like the way he's working, and he's moved a lot in the last couple of months.
It's good to
I'm feeling
hear.
a lot more comfortable with him. The other thing I wanted to do is just really just say our custodians and maintenance, they've been absolutely awesome. As soon as we got back to work in March, they've been working nonstop. They've been working a 40-hour regular week nonstop to this point, and they've been carrying a heavy load. We threw a whole disinfection program at them. They didn't bat an eye. They just went right to work, and they're getting the job done day in and day out. So thank you guys and girls, and we're just waiting for students to get back to school.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning the custodians. They've done an awesome job, and we appreciate what they do. So was there anything else, or is that it for the business services?
I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both for your reports.
Mark, can I just add?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyone else?
No, totally fine. I know that Mr. Doyle was saying that in the governor's plan, it requires that we be at 28 per 100,000 people infected. As of today, it's 151 people per 100,000. That number has substantially increased in the last couple of weeks. I think, Steve, you just shared 74. That was the number as of the end of last week.
Well, they do an adjusted case rate. So in counties that test a lot more people, they adjust the case rates. So we have been using the adjusted case rate. And if you look on the blueprint for the Safer Economy that was rolled out this week, that came out Tuesday, it had 77 for the adjusted case rate. I think the regular rate was 127. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the LA County page. Yeah.
Either way, we're a long ways away from 28.
Exactly. I'm wishing.
Are there any other comments or questions from other board members? Okay. All right. Okay, so now we'll move on to the regular consent calendar unless a trustee has a question concerning a particular item and asks that it be withdrawn from the consent calendar. The consent items are approved with a single motion by the Board of Trustees. Okay, so can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll move.
Okay.
Second. Oh, sorry, Barb.
Okay, motion by Mr. Malcolm, second by Ms. Pearson. And are there any comments or questions? Okay, we'll proceed with the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes, or items pat. The consent calendar is approved by a 5-0 vote. We will now move on to our action items. Action item number 1 is the approval of reopening TK through second grade for in-classroom instruction. And Mr. Doyle, can I have a motion?
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Malcolm, second by Mr. Richard. Mr. Doyle, did you want to present first before we proceed with the discussion?
Sure. So at our meeting last month, December 14th, we identified January 25th as a target date for us to begin to plan and work towards the return of our TK through second grade students for in-person instruction using our hybrid model. We were approved in early December for our TK through second waivers for our 3 elementary schools by LA County Department of Public Health. Since this time, as we continue to talk about, and everybody's very much aware of, the transmission rates have spiked and are higher than they've ever been in the county. And with that being said, my recommendation is that we propose pushing out our return date to Tuesday, February 16th. That was intentionally targeted for that date because it gives us time to revisit it at our next board meeting. As you know, from the very beginning, I've never been one wanting to identify hard and fast dates, because if we've learned anything through this pandemic, we've learned that we've got to be flexible and that things are ever changing and they're out of our control. And so, as we talked about earlier, having to pause our cohorts and things, those were unanticipated, results. So with that being said, I think it allows us to look at where we are at our next board meeting, but begin to plan, because there's a huge component of identifying which of our students and families are comfortable coming back, working through all of the pieces for that. So that's my recommendation. I am open to debate on this or whatever process we want to move towards. I know Tuesday night, Newhall was planning to return their students January 19th, I believe, and they have delayed. I don't believe they picked a target date. My understanding is they delayed the return for sometime in mid-February. So that's kind of where we are tonight. I know this is a very hot topic on both sides of it. We, of course, get both sides of it from both parent requests and parent letters, as well as our staff that, have concerns as well. So for now, I'd like to push it out to the 16th. We'll revisit it on our February meeting and see where we're at. Yesterday in our conference call with Dr. Farrar, or actually this morning, sorry, our call with actually Dr. Gilchrist, who's her right-hand person, they're unable to commit whether they're going to expand the pausing of cohorts beyond the end of January, because they just don't know. They have to monitor the data. They'll look at it near the end of January and determine, based on where the rates are at that time, whether we'll continue to recommend that the cohorts are paused, which could affect whether or not we bring back our TK through second students. So I'm open to discussion, like I said, debate, questions.
Yeah. Steve, Steve, I just quick question. You mentioned this about having enough time to make sure, you know, just giving enough time, whatever that date eventually is that we go back. How much time would you need? I know you mentioned, I know we talked today about possibly like a survey again for which parent, you know, which, you know, so and so for which families are okay to come back, which aren't. So, I mean, how much time would you need, do you think, in that with preparing everything?
Well, if you remember in December, the principals had asked that their plan was that this week they were going to begin surveying parents.
Okay.
But with the spike in numbers, obviously that's a moot point. I really think, in fairness, Mr. Richard, that 2 weeks gives us time to survey the families and start to set up, you know, class sizes based on. And then the other piece is, you know, we have some teachers that do what they call the room and Zoom. So they do live instruction with both kids in person and kids at home. And so that would be able to, if you had a class doing that, you could have your whole class online, and maybe only 8 of them were comfortable being in person and the others were at home, but you could do live instruction at the same point. That's an option for teachers as well. So
okay.
I think the 16th gives us time, if we can make it, you know, to the beginning of February and see where our rates are, begin to survey, you know, our families and find out who's willing to come back.
Thank you.
So,
Mr. Doyle, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So LAUSD has publicized that they're going to require all TK through 12th grade students have their vaccinations prior to returning to school. Is that going to be something that the state, have you heard anything, something the state's going to mandate, or should we discuss that as well?
This morning on our conference call, the county said they have no intention, and nor have they heard from the state that they have an intention that would mandate the vaccination for students. First of all, there's not a vaccination available for students at this point. I think they're doing some trials, but I'm not sure how young they go. You know, part of the reason the youngest students, they're constantly being access to new germs, and they're constantly fighting off things. So they tend to be able to fight against some strain like this that's foreign to them, because they're constantly doing that. Their body's evolving. We as adults have less of that ability because we're kind of set in our ways, so to speak. So, you know, LA Unified, they've obviously come out publicly and made that decision. I'm assuming they consulted with legal counsel over the ability to do that. I'm assuming if a parent chooses not to vaccinate their child, then they would be afforded a distance learning type of program.
Right.
But it doesn't sound like that's going to be mandated from the state or the county level at this point.
Okay.
Just to add though, LAUSD has also decided that their kids are not going back to school until next year. They've called it for the whole year already. So they have a little bit more time leeway still. Is that it, Mr. Malcolm? Can I ask a question?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
So, Mr. Dahl, can you please lay out for us, like, kind of along the same questions as John had? If we're looking at going back, I'm looking at my calendar. If you're recommending that we go back on the 16th, did you say the 16th or the 15th?
Well, the 16th is actually a Tuesday. It's the President's Day weekend, so Monday is a holiday.
Okay, so if we ever meeting on the 11th, would we actually be starting like some of the, like sending out questionnaires to the parents and teachers or whatever in the weeks before? So that would start as of the week of the 1st of February?
Yeah, probably. I would think about the middle to the end of that first week of February.
Okay.
Parents are pretty good about responding and turning it over. And remember, it's only our TK through 2nd at this point.
Okay. Okay. So at the end of the week, I'm just afraid, I want to give it time for us to get past this spike, hopefully. So we're not pushing it out for another month if we don't have to. But I do want to make sure that people are polled.
Yeah, and I'm not married to the 16th. If the board wants to push it out another week or two, I mean, that's just a target date. And like I said, we have to be flexible and be willing to. That's why I haven't liked identifying hard and fast dates because we have to be flexible if they need to move.
Yeah. One of the things that I would like to see happen, and I know we haven't really talked about this a lot, especially with the different areas, you know, I know that our governor has gone public and said that he wants ages 65 and older to be able to be vaccinated as of today or yesterday, but LA County has not opened that up yet. So I would love for our teachers to be able to be vaccinated before we go back to school, but we don't have any idea what time we're looking at for that because we don't know when those vaccinations are going to be available to them.
The county has said they're anticipating the beginning of February to roll out 1B, which is not only teachers, anyone who works for a school district. You can provide a pay stub, you can provide a badge, you can get a letter from the district, and you'd be eligible to be vaccinated. The other piece that we haven't talked about, but it is in the governor's plan, is the whole testing component. And the state has contracted with, correct me if I'm wrong, Lynette, I think it's called the Valencia Group. They're a group that has offered to test both staff and students statewide. They're a huge entity, and
it's the Valencia branch, and they actually worked directly with the state to create this agency for the sole purpose of testing. So they are trying to find funding sources, so the cost to the districts is much less than if we had to go with a different agency. So we have, there's actually on the hub, there is contact information, and I will be contacting them and setting up a meeting so we can get some of the details of how that would work. They are also encouraging us to partner with other districts with the Valencia Group, so the Valencia Group doesn't have to be in multiple locations. So,
and that's just for staff, Lynette?
That is actually for staff and for students, and it is based on what I saw today. It looks like a self-testing protocol where you actually swab yourself and then send it in. But again, I don't know any of the details of that, but that's what that's surveillance testing. That's not for people who have symptoms. It's for asymptomatic.
And the purple tier counties like LA County in the governor's plan are required to do testing for staff and students every week, correct?
Correct. That's what's in the proposal. But, you know, I actually have been on some of the webinars where they talked about that this proposal was put together before the vaccine was available. And so the testing component is something they are anticipating might change to include vaccinations, because the grant proposal doesn't even mention vaccinations. And they think that that's just because of the timing.
So I know you did some rough calculations. So the money from the state is going to, depending on the cost per test, is only good for about anywhere from 7 to 11 weeks. Is that correct?
Correct. The $450 per student would be expended, depending on the cost, between 7 weeks or 11 weeks. So the grant really is to pay for the testing, in our case, in the purple tier.
Annette, how much would it cost per test? And you mentioned $450 per student, I think you just meant. So was that supposed to be the whole time? So they're getting tested every week.
They're getting tested every week. Currently, the Valencia branch is charging $58 per test, which is about a third of the cost if you went out privately and got the test. Okay. They are looking at additional funding, and they anticipate the cost to go down in the next couple of weeks to $38 per test. Okay. That gets us 11 weeks.
I have a question, and I'm sorry I didn't think of it before so that you're ready for it. But have we considered group testing so that you don't have to actually test every single person? You can save money. And obviously within that group, if you end up having a positive test, then you test more people, but that you don't necessarily have to test each people individually.
I haven't seen anything in the proposal that talks about group testing, but again, it's a proposal, and so that's subject to change still as it moves through legislation.
I mean, that just could be a way to stretch the dollars, but I don't know exactly if the testing is being done off site, then that might complicate that. But it's unfortunate because I think that would be a way to expand testing and make it more available and more cost efficient.
But I believe the group testing was done with some of the sports teams in the bubble environments where they could control their environment. When we have kids going home to their families and staff going, it's hard to control that environment and be able to test that group. It's just
that's not what I'm talking about. Like, well, even if you're testing individually or not, is that basically if, let's say, we test students once a week, you're still testing them once a week. It's just done in a group format, so that if you do end up with a positive, result in one test, then you test more people to narrow down who actually
it's
has
like
it.
This classroom of kids.
Yes.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. That's what, so it doesn't mean that anyway. So that way you get more testing done and it's more cost efficient. So I just didn't know if there was a way to do
let's say I haven't seen anything about that, but there is a lot of information. So I will not pretend to be an expert, and I won't say that it's not in there either, because it's pretty dense reading.
Yeah. Well, Lynette, it's a good thing it doesn't change every day. The new information, you can
every hour.
I know where the hub is now, so if it changes, maybe they'll make it a different color when they change the words.
Hey, Lynette, do we know the false rating calculation on the test? Have they released that at all?
I haven't seen that yet. Again, I haven't actually had a conversation with Valencia branch yet, so I don't know the details of the testing.
Okay.
At least some testing is better than no testing.
Right. And again,
this test now, you'll catch it the next day or whatever. So
this testing in particular is for asymptomatic surveillance testing. It is not testing to replace if somebody is symptomatic or sick.
Okay.
But I'm curious, once staff is vaccinated, would they be required to still test weekly, or would you only then have to test students?
I don't know. I
actually heard something about that at some point today. I believe that we still have to test because I don't believe they know whether the vaccine will keep you from spreading, from being like a carrier.
And that's one thing that we are telling everybody at work is that getting the vaccine, even because I got my first vaccine last weekend, and they're saying it only protects you. It doesn't protect you from spreading it.
That's what I believe I heard today as well.
Lynette, and this is another question. For those who've had COVID and who have the antibodies, I mean, is that similar? I mean, obviously I know there's some, they don't know how long antibodies would last if somebody, people can re-get COVID or anything. So I know that, I don't know if that's the question that's come up at some point too.
I actually think the surveillance testing is for all students and all staff.
Okay,
I mean,
gotcha.
Everything I have read, they use the word all, but again,
Yeah, I know. Sorry, I'm just pestering you here. Yeah.
Right, but yeah, I when I read everything, it says all students, all staff surveillance.
Perfect.
And they are recommending that even if someone's had COVID, that they still get vaccinated.
Yes.
Because it is a COVID and there's different strains. So you don't know, I don't think they have anything that is specified how long you're going to be safe from it.
With the antibodies, Laura?
Right.
Laura, did you have any more questions, or John or Fred or Janine?
No, I'm good.
Okay. I just had some questions. I had wanted to ask Steve. One of the things that, you hear about as far as making schools safer is obviously the ventilation system. So I just wanted to ask about the ventilation systems in our classrooms and offices and facilities.
Sure, and Jaime, you can help me because you have more of the specifics, but I know we have custom made filters put in that are super high efficient. And we've had those in the past, correct, Jaime? Predominantly because we've had a lot of fire issues in Castaic as well.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, we just swapped them out. So we just had new air filters put into all the systems. So preparing for January 25th.
Okay.
So they will be swapped out again. We'll the next scheduled. So we'll stay on task with our HVAC filter replacement system.
Okay.
And they are high efficiency. They're about the balancing between the efficiency of the unit and the efficiency of the air is difficult. And these are about the best filters that we can use for these particular units that we have on schools.
All right. For February, Laura, did you have a question?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, just along those same, so because it's an HVAC system, they do not ventilate, each room does not ventilate to outside, correct?
There is a air exchange that we have to do. It's part of the Title 24 standard. We must bring fresh air in at a particular rate, 15 to 20%. The good thing is that just about every, or I could say every classroom has a single package unit. So the air is not shared from classroom to classroom. Each classroom has its own air conditioning unit.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. That's really great. Okay, and do we have enough, do we have adequate PPE for our staff and students for February 16th open?
Yes. And I know Jaime monitors that. And when we get down to a certain level, each site has a point of contact for monitoring their PPE, and they contact Jaime so we can reorder and keep restocked so we wouldn't run out.
Okay. Have all the principals been trained for our safety protocols as far as, what needs to be in place in their schools to protect staff?
Going back, I don't even remember when. Time is lost nowadays, but I know Jaime sat down with every principal and walked through all of the LADPH protocols. It's quite comprehensive. Mm-hmm. And they went through and they had to certify and check off, make sure that they could meet all of those safety protocols. And then in turn, there was some question, and Patty and I worked together, and we had the principals walk through those protocols with all their staff members. That was probably maybe a month or two ago now. So.
Okay, so have all staff and teachers been trained on all these protocols? Have the teachers had an opportunity to come to campuses and see the protocols in place and been trained on?
I wouldn't necessarily say they have the ability to come to campus at any point. I don't know that they all have, but they have at least, we have not required that they come in person. That goes back to our original decision to allow teachers to choose to work from home or to work from campus.
As we look toward hopefully an open date, is there a timeline for bringing them on campus and having them see, what's in place? Because it's tough if you get letters from them and they're concerned, but if they haven't been on campus and seen the protocols, that might ease some of the concerns.
Yeah, I know we talked to the principals a while back about encouraging staff to come onto campus and see it for themselves. I'm not sure of the status of that, but I know there probably are some that have not been on campus.
I do know, in speaking with the principals, I do know that they have shared the protocols multiple times with Lori Farmer present to answer any questions. I can't speak on behalf if every single staff member, I know that there's some staff members that have not come on campus, but that doesn't mean that they haven't seen the protocols because they've been part of all those meetings, whether it's Zoom or whatever way they've done the meetings. So it's been done multiple times. And honestly, it's open that if any staff member had questions, we're all available to answer any of their concerns or point out in the protocols where their concerns would be answered.
Okay. I mean, I would hope that everyone would take the time to still come on campus and see, you know, what's in place at the schools. Because I know I've been impressed with what I've seen at the schools, and it definitely alleviates a lot of my concerns, you know, when I see, you know, what's going on there. So
It does take you back a little bit. I remember recently prior to the break, we were at Live Oak, and I made the comment that the office looked like bank tellers because it was like a whole hockey plexiglass around, you know, the office. So, you know, we have went to great lengths, and, you know, kudos to Jaime and his folks to make sure we've got all that in place. And, you know, at some point we have everything and we're comfortable and we're ready to move forward.
yeah, I can see they're taking it seriously. So thanks to everyone.
I have another question. Are we still under the governor's and regional stay-at-home orders?
Yes.
Okay, so if we are still under those stay-at-home orders, how do we circumvent asking teachers to come in, or you know, I'm saying go against that type of order for everybody for necessary, you know what is necessary, and is I know education is very important. That's not where I'm getting at, but to me, this doesn't pass the common sense test. Why, you know, we're told that this is a surge upon a surge upon a surge, and it is very important that we stay home, but now we are excited to jump back into school and put our teachers in danger, put our staff in danger when we can't guarantee their safety. And to me, that's I just can't get that through my head that we're doing something like that or even thinking about it.
Has the governor said that schools can't have children on staff?
No, the governor's stay-at-home order allowed for schools that were operating cohorts to continue. It allowed for schools that had TK through second waivers approved to continue, or to even start up. We asked that for clarification because we had our waivers approved, but we had not yet started. And we were told we were able to bring them back because they had been approved. We had met all the criteria. So I understand what you're saying, Mr. Malcolm, but that's how the order was written.
Right. And I don't disagree with the way it's written, but it doesn't make any sense because I don't see the difference between a teacher and any other human being. And did the county not also stop approving applications and waivers to return back to school?
They stopped approving them after November 30th. But if you had submitted one prior to that, which we had, and they were subsequently approved, they were considered approved.
And I consider that awesome that we did get approved, but with the current data and all the information that's out there, and the numbers are not flatlining at all, you know, to me, it's concerning. It's very, very concerning.
You know, I feel like a lot of what was missing in our discussion last month was what is best for the children. I feel like we focused more on the adults and we didn't focus on the kids. I took the opportunity today to read the governor's, you know, it's sort of his plan, you know, what's it called?
Safe Schools for All plan.
Yes, yeah. And then there were 3 documents that were attached to that, you know, webpage. And so I went through all of them and I read them, and there were some things that struck out to me, and forgive me, I highlighted some of the stuff, and it'll just be easier for me if I just read some of these because it'll be hard for me to paraphrase. But one of the things it said was Governor Newsom agrees with parents, educators, policymakers, and pediatricians that in-person is the best setting to meet not only the core learning needs of students, but also their mental health and social emotional needs. It's especially important for our youngest kids, students, and students with disabilities, and those already disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. Resuming in-person instruction is critical for kids, families, and communities throughout the state. So that was, and what I just read, that was one of the links that goes to the California Department of Public Health. And then there was their document on the California Department of Health's document on the rationale for the California's Safe Schools for All plan. Again, they talk more about the benefits of in-person instruction, particularly for elementary school kids. And one of the things that stuck out to me was that we've learned a great deal. This is what they say. We have learned a great deal since the beginning of the pandemic, and both national and international studies demonstrate the relatively low risks and high benefits of educating students in classrooms, especially for elementary grades. I think one of my frustrations with a lot of some of the stuff that's just not happened on a school level, but just in general, is I feel like we're kind of on this wash, rinse, repeat cycle that when something spikes, we just go back to what we did in March. But a lot has happened since March. We've learned a lot about the virus since March. And one of the things that they talk about in this was that research across the globe shows that children get COVID-19 less often than adults. And when they do get sick, they get sick less than adults. They also state that children do not seem to be the major source of transmission, either to each other or to adults. And that is a concern. Like, if we're sending kids back to school, are they going to make the adults sick? And, that's a valid concern. But studies are showing that that is not a high risk. That is, they also said that even in communities with many COVID cases, I guess you could consider ours, they do not see many outbreaks in schools. That's because the right precautions can stop outbreaks before they start. Evidence shows that the schools with the right mitigation strategies have been able to prevent in-school transmission among students and staff. Another thing that they say is, they say, we know it works. We can stop the spread in schools by layering and carefully implementing mitigation strategies, including masks, cohorting, proper ventilation, washing hands, testing, and symptom screening. And these are all things that I know we have in place in our, for our protocols. So, and again, talking about what's best for kids, social and emotional skills are cultivated in the youngest grades, are the foundational future for well-being in the classroom. Students learn not only academic skills, but social and emotional skills as well. I mean, you've got kids now that are in the first grade that haven't been in a classroom since 5 months into their kindergarten year, and here they're like halfway through their first grade year and they haven't been in a classroom. And I think that that's something that we need, when we talk about what's best for kids, we need to consider, that it's been a whole year almost that they haven't been in a classroom, and how does that affect them? The conclusion on this one document, they say through careful implementation of safety measures and by phasing in our youngest students, who are at the lowest risk and stand to benefit the most from in-person learning, we can build experience, confidence, and trust that our schools can be both safe workplaces and safe learning environments. And that is all, again, from the California Department of Health. Another, the last thing was they have an evidence summary for TK through 6 schools and COVID-19 transmission. And again, on this, they say the first, one of the reasons why younger kids aren't the major spreaders of it is because this is what they say. The first is that they have produced fewer receptors into their immune system. So they're not, they're already somewhat protected because of the way that their immune systems are set up. They they have fewer doorways into their body for the virus, which leads to fewer infections and less severe infections. So even if they do get infected, it's a lot less severe infections and less severe infections for those who do catch the virus. And they've also, like Mr. Doyle mentioned earlier, that their immune systems are used to fighting off colds. So it is better prime them to fight off COVID-19. again, a lot of, okay, then another summary just about how kids, let's see, only, okay, so a study from Australia mentioned above and investigated the cases that there was transmission in schools. It found that of children who tested positive, a low number relative to the total number of students, only 0.3% had had contact with another child who was positive. That's child-child transmission. So child to adult transmission occurred only 1% of the time. In contrast, adult to child transmission occurred 1.5% of the time, and adult to adult transmission was 4.4% of the time. So really, the child to child transmission, the child to adult transmission is very low. So when we're talking about 15 kids in a classroom and 1 adult, you know, again, we've created a cohort. We have all the protocols in place. So I feel like, again, if we're talking about what's best for the kids, I think that we need to consider, and I know that we've kind of talked before about data, using data and science, right? And so when I read at the California Department of Health that they have these, you know, these articles that they've written, they're using data and science to come up with their conclusions. I'm not a public health expert, so I have to rely on that. And if, you know, and if they are saying that it's safe to come back when protocols are in place, I think that we need to seriously consider moving forward with opening our TK through 2nd grades in February. Again, it says the data indicates that the risk of transmission in elementary schools can be very low. Again, when you layer all of the protocols in place, social distancing, having cohorts, masking, good ventilation, and things like that, that's, you know, all things that we have in place. I think that we need to consider that data. It even says here that again, like what I just said, course strategies include, for a successful approach to opening, you know, schools would be course strategies include masks, physical distancing, small, stable groups, hand hygiene, ventilation, screening for symptoms of close contact, and asymptomatic testing. Each layer provides additional protection, and when used together have been associated with low or zero transmission. Even in communities, and this to me is the important statement, even in communities with a high COVID-19 prevalence. So that is telling me that even if you are in a community that has a high prevalence, you can still open safely. And so again, you know, we've learned a lot since last year, and I think that it's important to use the current data that's been given to us on how to safely open schools and the transmission rates, you know, from child to adult when making our decision. I know that we talk about other schools in our valley that aren't opening, but I know that La Cañada School District has voted, and they're in our county, to keep their elementary TK through 2nd grade classes open, and they are considering bringing 3rd grade back in February. Of course, apparently that's tentative, but they did vote to keep their TK through 2nd grade classes open, most likely because that's what is best for the kids. And so I just think it's time, you know, for us to make the decision to come back. We have all the protocols in place. We've already successfully brought back some of our cohorts. And so we've had practice with that. We've done a slow phased opening in those. So we've been able to do that. Even the governor's office and the California Department of Health recommend doing so. And like I read in there, the science and data suggest it is safe to do so even when there is a surge in the community. So I think a lot of our discussion also needs to be centered around what's best for the kids, because we have a lot of kids that haven't been in a classroom for almost a full year. And I think that we need to also consider their needs as well. Are
Oh,
there
I
any
didn't know you were done.
comments?
Um,
Oh, I'm done.
okay.
I can keep going on though.
No, because I mean, I've got data too, and I could read stories from the U.S. News. You can go on there and look at December 3rd or December 2nd, 2020. U.S. News published a report where 1 million students in the United States have COVID. 1 million students. Israel's closing down. Italy's closing down their schools. The United Kingdom shows the biggest group of
Israel didn't do it right.
cases of COVID are through with students. And so, you make a statement saying that we should have the health of our students as a priority. I can't agree more with you 100%. And that's their mental health, their well-being. But it also, in my opinion, we have to consider everyone's health, not just the students, not just the teachers, not just the staff, but everyone's. And that's my opinion.
Okay, so you mentioned Israel, and that's in the California Department of Health, one of their evidence summary for TK through 6 schools and COVID-19 transmission. And this was a lesson on what not to do. So in addition, this is what it says. In addition to the studies above, a study from a middle and high school in Israel after reopening in May illustrates the need for mitigation strategies to support safe schools. The school reopened in May and no physical distancing measures in place. So due to a heat wave, they stopped requiring masks for 2 days. They had closed windows with air conditioners, using the 2 days without masking or proper ventilation. 2 symptomatic cases were in the school, which led to an outbreak. Again, like it said in one of the other things, if you do have mitigation strategies in place, you can do a safe opening.
I just want to add that I think that depending on how we feel and who we are talking to in the community, we can all find literature behind our beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
It's the California Department of Health and the Office of the Governor of California.
Maureen, can I please have my chance now?
Yeah. Sorry, I thought you were done.
No. Just looking at COVID cases from today, not even getting into a whole lot of literature. As of today, between the ages of 0 and 17, there's been 350,000 cases for ages 0 to 17. Yet only 293,000 cases for people that are over age 65. So children are getting it. And not only do I have a concern for the children and their well-being, they are getting educated, but I also have our staff. And I think they're a big percentage of it. And whether we're doing testing on site or not, we still have the chance, especially we're in the purple tier right now. I mean, the recommendation isn't even to go back right now. We need to wait and look at those numbers in February and see where we're at. And hopefully we will see a decrease by then. But, when we started this whole process in going back,
That was March 13th when it first, way back when.
Okay, but I'm going back. This week, the average test positivity rate was 17%. Last week, it was 15%. 3 months ago, it was only 3%. So that's how much of an increase that there has been. And most of the counties in California are in the purple tier. We just we're at a very, very high rate right now. And I have been with and know people that have died. My daughter's a COVID nurse now, and she comes home every day telling me 5 people died today in our hospital. I was with 3 people today when they died in the hospital. And I agree. We all want to go back. We can all agree, like Mr. Malcolm said, we all want to go back. And even our teachers want to go back when it's safe. And I don't feel like that's right now. So I appreciate that Mr. Doyle has recommended it and pushed it out till February. Hopefully after all of the holiday get-togethers and New Year's gatherings, that we will see that number go back and be in a safer zone where we can go back.
Mrs. Maxon, do you want to weigh in?
I'm okay with the February 2 because I do believe we need to continue to watch numbers and watch data. And I do hear what Mayreen is saying as well. I would also like to see data just in our own city, but I don't believe we can fully make a decision until February 11th, again, just like our January meeting, until we are out of purple or until our county says we can go back. Because right now we couldn't anyway, right? I guess we
It's
could
a
go.
recommendation. They aren't, it's not a hard line. Just,
Get that. But being in what they call the deep purple, which I guess our county is in, and I wish we were somewhat separated out in Santa Clarita, because I did see that unincorporated Castaic where there's 226 cases because they took out the jail numbers. I read all of that, but I do think I am concerned about the well-being and the mental health. I don't know if any of I don't know what they call them anymore, but the job alikes or any of those county supports that I used to attend all the time, if they've even given us things we can do in even smaller numbers to check on that. Because I do remember we were worried before I even left that just calls on kids that we were really worried about as a state, pretty much as a nation, had gone down to almost 0% per se. Where it used to be a much higher percentage. So those are the families too that I'm worried about, and the kids that I'm worried about, because they're with that environment all day, sadly. And just our kids that don't even have those concerns ahead. I am worried about, because all the principals talk about, even the teachers say, when we get on, we just let them chat for a while because they so miss being together. And that's part of that plays a part in their academic growth as well as just their mental and well-being growth. But we've got our hands tied to some degree. And I still want to continue to revisit until we feel it is pretty safe. And hopefully by the time we revisit, maybe the majority of our staff, if they choose to take it, have had the vaccine and feel somewhat a little more comfortable that they are protected. So if we're able to come back February 16th, as long as that gives us time, because I'm worried about that holiday being in there, does that give time for our February 11th meeting for the teachers and the PALs and everybody, even though they've done their surveys and all that, to be prepared for some kids coming back on that following week? I just want to make sure I'm backwards. You know me, I have that humongo calendar in my office. I'm just a backwards mapper in that way. I guess I don't want any barriers. There are already going to be natural barriers, but barriers that we can somewhat control. I just hope February 16th gives everybody, if the county has said, okay, you know what, if Dr. Farrar and her support people say that they're not recommending we not bring any cohorts back, I just hope we have enough time to make sure they're right. I'm looking forward to what the PALs are going to get back from families. Some of my decision thinking will be how many families really want to come back or don't want to come back, because I think that's going to impact our planning. That's just where I'm at. So I'm okay with the February 16th, as long as we do what we're doing today. We're checking, we're following county strongly recommended advice. I'm also in favor of, if in April, we're pretty good to just come back, even though there's only probably a month and a half to maybe 2 months left. I do think, even if it's a month, this is just me, that we could have any kind of face-to-face time with kids. I think that is uber healthy. Even just to be with the teachers I even think in the end, it's going to be uber healthy for the teachers. If it's safe, people have had their vaccines, whatever. We're not as big as LAUSD, but I don't agree with them already saying they're going to close for the rest of the year, because just like we're not able to go back in January, they don't know that it could possibly get better. I mean, it doesn't always seem like it, but you never know. And I guess they can always vote to open up again. But I think we should go month to month if that's okay with the board. That's my opinion. I'm still hoping kids can come back, and I'm still hoping teachers come back, but I know it might be inevitable, but I really would like for not one human being get sick.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just, we need to remember we have had cohorts on campus. We have staff on campus even now, and we've been able to successfully do so. And there are mitigation measures so that you can keep it contained if there is a problem. So
I do agree with all of that, because I'm just now hoping that February 16th, because they're all, I know it's a recommendation, but it's a strong recommendation. So.
I do have a little bit of a concern, and Maureen, Janine, you can think through this because you have been on the front lines doing this kind of thing. So the whole idea about talking about the 16th, which is a Tuesday, if we vote to go back on Thursday, you said, like, are we giving them enough time to start on that day? Like, do we need to talk about possibly going back on Thursday that week instead of the recommendation of Tuesday? Like, how much time do we think they're going to need as teachers to go back if we're deciding that on the 11th?
Well, and my thing is, I'd want to hear from PALS, because they are the ones that are planning with their staff. And if PALS feel comfortable that the 16th is a good date to come back, because they've talked with staff and they think after getting survey data, they can do that. I'm not wanting it to be like, I want them to feel comfortable that they can do this. I don't want them to be pushed and pressured, or they may be like, let's go, my staff's ready. But I would imagine each school's different to some degree. They all have their own personality. So I don't know. I guess I would want to know. I know that at DADCO, when I was there, we talked about this type of thing. Like, okay, we're not just making a date out of the air.
Okay. So Steve, can you get some input from the PALs about that before the 11th meeting, as far as how long that they would need to go? Like, are they ready, or, are the teachers wanting a couple of days, or how does it all work out?
Well, first of all, go ahead, Lynette.
We have an MOU with the teachers that say they get 3 days. I think it's 3 half days to prepare their classrooms. And I'm just pulled up the calendar. And if we decide on the 11th, we have the 12th as a holiday and the 15th as a holiday.
So are you saying that based on the MOU, we need to revise that date then? Okay.
Yeah.
And I would have suggested, rather than pushing it to Thursday, because we have hybrid Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Fridays, that we would just push it to Monday, the 22nd, which would allow for those 3 days in their classroom. And it gives us a little more time.
And are they going to be okay doing the 3 half days in their classrooms plus still having to teach online?
That was what was agreed on in the MOU.
Okay, just checking that they would do that on top of it, that it wouldn't have to be like separate days.
Right. So as a point of order, the recommendation that was published was to return the students on February 16th, Tuesday, February 16th. That was motioned, I believe, by Mr. Malcolm and seconded by Mr. Richard, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you want to amend that or change that in any way, and I will remind you, in December, my recommendation again was to bring our TK through second students back on January 25th. Through discussion and an amended motion, we chose to use the 25th as a target date for return to be revisited tonight. So if you want to change that to be a targeted date and revisit it on the 11th, you can. If you want to make it the 22nd, you just would need to amend that motion.
I think we still
Is
have
that
to
something that I have to amend since it was my motion?
Or else you go through and vote on your motion, Fred. And then if it fails, you can make a second emotion, another emotion.
What was Janine going to say?
I think we have to keep it as a targeted date because we kept the 25th as a targeted date and we're not able to start on the 25th.
You're saying the 22nd is the targeted date because that's the day we would, according to the MOU, we can't do it till then. Right?
For an MOU, we have to follow that.
Okay.
So can Fred just amend his
Yeah,
he can.
motion? Feels weird to vote. I'm sorry.
So Fred, you decide, do you want to amend it or do you want us to vote and then?
I'm just trying to think of the date. What would be the proper date that we would push it out to?
The 20s, well.
It would be the 22nd, Monday, the 22nd.
Of February.
February.
Okay, that's where I'm having a problem, which way we're going there. Okay. So now do I need to make a motion to amend the date? We push it out till 22nd February, or I just say?
Just amend your
Just
motion.
say, I want to amend my motion.
I want to amend my motion to push out the opening to 22 February.
and I'll second that.
Okay, so we'll vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Action item number 1 is done.
This could be a short meeting, people.
Okay. All right. So item number 2, approval of Spectrum WAN Internet Services. Do I have a motion? What?
I'll move.
Okay. Okay. I'll second the motion. Okay. Motion by Mr. Richard, second by Mayreen Burke. Are there any questions?
Dell or Jaime, on this one, one of the things that I talked to Steve about is I know you've budgeted everything for this, and I was just curious, of that 139,500, I know it might get cut in half, but how much is this already budgeted for in our budget? This isn't an additional 139,500, it's $500. Is it? It's already in the budget, I believe. So
It is in the budget.
Okay.
It's already in the budget.
Okay.
Is the
And
full
when we
amount in the
present
budget,
this-
Lynette? The full amount's in the budget in case we didn't get E-rate?
Yeah. Yes, and we always try to be as conservative as possible. So yes.
And then just to be clear, because I talked to Jaime about this, Jaime, we've never not gotten E-rate, right? We've always gotten it, sometimes later than sooner, but we've gotten it.
I can only remember one time where we had to pay the full amount for a few months and then got reimbursed the entire amount once the funding came through.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions? Are we ready to vote?
Aye.
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 Aye. Item passes 5-0. Item number 3, approval of proposal from Sierra School Equipment. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
A motion by Mr. Richards, second by Ms. Pearson. Are there
No.
any questions? Oh, what? I thought.
It was by Fred, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Not a big deal.
Malcolm.
It's okay.
Motion by Mr. Malcolm, second by Ms. Pearson. Sorry. Are there any questions? All right, we'll vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Item passes 5-0. Item number 4, approval of increase to AvCon inspection services. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Pearson, second by Mr. Richard. Are there any questions? Okay, we'll vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Item passes 5-0. Item number 5, approval of global change order number 09. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second it.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Maxon, second by Mr. Malcolm. Are there any questions? Okay, we'll vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Item passes 5-0. Item number 6, approval of additional fees for West Group Designs. Can I have a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second. Motion by Mr. Richard, second by Maureen Burke. Are there any questions? Okay, we'll vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Item passes 5-0. Okay, item number 7, adoption of resolution number 20/21-15, lower emissions school bus program. Can I have is there a motion?
I'll make it.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Maxon, second by Ms. Pearson. Are there any questions?
Mr. Garcia, I won't say anything.
Fuel injectors?
Because we're not talking about fuel injectors.
The good thing,
just
propane
hope that we
buses
can
don't
one
have
day-
fuel injectors. So.
I just hope we can one day fill the bus with children.
I'm with you.
When it's safe, we'll be able to do that.
Okay, so are there any questions? Okay, we'll vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Item passes 5-0. Item number 8, first reading to adopt revised administrative regulation 4161.11, the industrial accident illness leave. Is there a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Pearson, second by Mr. Malcolm. Are there any questions? Okay, we'll vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Item passes 5-0. Number 9, first reading to delete old board policy and adopt a new board policy 5116.1, intra-district open enrollment. Can I get a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
I'll second. I'll second.
Don't fight over it, gentlemen.
Okay, so motion by Mr. Richard and second by Mr. Malcolm. Any questions? All right, we'll vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Item passes 5-0. Number 10, item number 10, first reading to adopt revised exhibit 4301, organizational chart. Can I get a motion? Or is there a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Pearson, second by Ms. Maxon. Any questions? All right, we'll vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Item passes 5-0. We will now move on to the reports and information section of the meeting. And number 1 is the 2021 mileage request form. Was there something you wanted to talk about?
No, it's just for your information. The
Okay.
IRS rate has changed. It's actually been reduced by 1.5 cents from 57.5 to 56.
What, Laura?
I said, although the gas prices haven't gone down, but you know.
Well, it's amazing because people are driving less, you would think, overall. So
Well, yeah, that's true. That is true.
That's why they got to charge more.
Right.
Plus recently bought hybrids.
Good for you, Laura.
I did. I got a new car.
That's awesome. Okay, so did you want to mention anything about the Williams settlement legislation?
No, just
Second
information
quarterly
that there were no complaints filed.
Okay. And then were there any discussion items? It didn't look like it. I'm just Making sure. Okay.
Maybe
And-
do you have something that you wanted to
Yeah,
add?
well, okay, so the next thing is future agenda items.
Okay.
So I did want to ask Mr. Doyle, I was just curious, last month we had, some anonymous letters read. And, I was just a little bit concerned at kind of how that went. And I just want to avoid a situation where someone can anonymously just be really mean to someone in their letter. I'm just concerned about, some of the statements about staff. And I just didn't know if what our policy was, what the law is. So I just wanted to ask Mr. Doyle if we could look into what the protocols are for that. And, I know that when we're in person, no one has to state their name if they're in the boardroom reading, but they're still there. And so I'm just wondering what the protocols are for an online format. So I just was wondering if we could have that as maybe a discussion item, or you could let us know at the next board meeting, so that we
Yes,
can.
I'll reach out to legal counsel and bring that back next meeting for you.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to know what the best practices are for that. So, and so that's it. Were there any other future agenda items, requests from other board members? Okay. All right. We do not need to return to closed session. So with that, we can close our meeting. Can I get a motion to close the meeting?
I'll move.
I'll second at 8:48.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Richards, second by Ms. Pearson. Can we vote?
Aye.
Janine?
Oh, hold on.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm still there. Aye.
okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We voted 5-0 to close our meeting, and we are now adjourned at 8:48 p.m.